The wife is first. Chapter 4, Entering the Imperial Palace. Compared to the spiritless appearance from before, those beautiful black pupils that contained such emotions made him look much more quick-witted. Jing Shao merely smiled, watching helplessly. He wanted to tell his wife not to be so timid, but then he realized that in their previous life, he had totally refused to listen to him. He was arrogant and conceited and thought that everyone was beneath him, that in the end, he suffered a miserable fate. After all, when a wall is about to collapse, everyone would give it a shove. He couldn't help but smile deprecatingly. "Your Highness, we have arrived at the entrance," the eunuch Chun Shi politely announced. Soon after, the sedan halted and was lowered. Normally, they would be allowed to enter the inner imperial palace on the sedan. However, today, they were paying a formal visit to the Empress's palace. They must exchange the sedan for an imperial carriage at the entrance gate. Surrounded by palace servants on all four sides of the carriage, the couple inside were no longer willing to speak much. After the morning court assembly, Emperor Hongzhen went to the Luenyi Palace where the Empress resided. Together with Empress Wu, the two were waiting in the main hall to meet the newly wedded bride and bridegroom. At age 40, Emperor Hongzhen was in his prime. He has the air of a proper ruler. He exerted an imposing aura simply by just sitting there. Looking at his imperial father, who was now about 12 years younger, Jing Shao concealed his clenched fists in the sleeves of his pale blue robes. Slowly unclenching it, he, together with Mu Hanzhong, respectfully offered the emperor and the empress their greetings. Emperor Hongzheng praised Jing Shao before imparting a few words. "You are now an adult. From now on, think before you speak and act. I do not want to hear of a similar incident like that of throwing your imperial mother's tea table." This third son understands, thanking imperial father for his teaching. Jing Shao responded indifferently, his expression obviously showed his unwillingness to comply. "On behalf of this happy occasion, your Majesty shouldn't blame him anymore." The Empress was naturally very observant. She quickly laughed, offering him a way to avoid embarrassment. "Today we get to meet our new in-law." The palace maid, who was standing on the side, quickly laid out a cushion in front of the emperor and the empress. Mu Hanzhong stepped forward and knelt down in order to kowtow towards Emperor Hongzheng. Then he raised a cup of tea over the crown of his head in offering, "Imperial father, please have this cup of tea." All of his actions and mannerism were completely up to the standards of how literary gentlemen should behave. Emperor Hongzheng received the tea, drank all of it in one smooth movement and laughed. "I did not expect Mu Jin's second son to have such a graceful character." Delighted, he happily rewarded him with a pair of sheep-fat jade. Thanking imperial father-in-law, Mu Hanzhong expressed his thanks neither too humbly or haughtily. Turning to the side, he repeated the etiquette and kneeled in front of the empress, offering her tea. The empress smiled and took the tea leisurely, but she was not at all in a hurry to allow him up. She merely turned to speak with the emperor. "Your Majesty is very insightful. It is said that even before Mu Jin's second son turned 17 years old, he was already a very respected figure among the capital's young nobles. Is that so?" This time Emperor Hongzheng seemed to be very interested. To be able to pass one of the civil examinations at age 17 was rather rare. Previously, he had only seen the capable eldest son of the Marquis of Beiwei estate. He never expected this one to appear. Though he was the son of a concubine, he was a hidden jewel. He couldn't help but find the situation a little bit unfortunate. This person, if he had been allowed to take the imperial examination, he certainly would have been a gifted individual. The Marquis of Beiwei would have good means of governance. It was truly a pity. It is merely a joke between a few childhood playmates. It is not true. Mu Hanzhong had been kneeling for a long time, his body was becoming more and more uncomfortable, his complexion was beginning to turn pale. Nonetheless, he had continued kneeling. It was only by a timely interjected sentence that he was able to call attention to the fact that he was still kneeling. "Oh, child, why is your complexion like this?" the Empress said, taking a quick glance at Jing Xiao's reaction, who appeared indifferent and not even bothering to ask someone to help Mu Hanjiang up. Narrowing her eyes, she laughed and then gifted Mu Hanjiang a beautiful box full of priceless jewels. Mu Hanjiang looked at the very generous gift, recalled what Jing Xiao had told him in the sedan, and accepted it without hesitation. When he stood up, his vision turned black for a second and he swayed slightly. A palace maid was quick to step forward and support him by his arm. Since you are unwell, the both of you can return home. Emperor Hongzheng gestured for them to be dismissed. Mu Hanjiang refused any further support from the palace maid. Jing Xiao was unconcerned and he walked out without a word. Only heaven knows that at this moment, he really wanted to carry Jun Qing in his embrace. However, they were still in the imperial palace, he could only hold back and feign impatience. Out of the imperial palace, and as he was stepping down the imperial carriage, Mu Hanjiang faced forward and looked at his husband who was walking away in large strides, his figure was cold and unfeeling. Mu Hanjiang smiled and laughed at himself mockingly. What did he expect? Sure enough, weren't those brief moments of tenderness just an illusion? In an effort to keep up, he quickened his pace. He did not even walk 2 steps before his vision suddenly turned black again. He had not expected his body to be so unwell that he would fall faint. The next moment, he felt himself fell into a warm embrace. Jun Qing, what's wrong? Only when he opened his eyes again a few short seconds after, did he see Jing Xiao's anxious expression. Jing Xiao saw him faint and in the blink of an eye, he pulled his wife into his embrace, quickly carrying him onto the sedan. Chun Shi, go to the imperial physician courtyard and request Zhang Huan, Zhang Taiyi to come over to the estate. Raise the sedan and immediately set out back to the estate. Yes. The sedan bearers responded in unison, quickly lifting the sedan. Chun Shi hurriedly ran all the way to the imperial physician courtyard. Jun Qing. Where do you feel unwell? Jing Xiao laid him backwards in his embrace against his chest and touched his wife's forehead. How did you develop a fever? Mu Hanjiang merely kept silent. This person was very hard to figure out. Today in front of the emperor, he looked at him with regret and repeatedly made him feel inferior. He was initially already in pain, his body unwell, and now he felt distressed in his heart and mind. It was difficult to bear, but he only felt disheartened, his consciousness was beginning to fade. ******. Xiao'er seems to be unhappy with the marriage arrangement I planned for him. After the two people left, the Empress turned towards the Emperor and said, acting embarrassed. He is still young. Naturally he doesn't understand your troubles, but this child's affections are genuine. Emperor Hongzheng was very satisfied. Just now, in Jing Xiao's reflection, he clearly saw and understood. Whether or not he accepted it, whether or not he liked it, his expressions were sincere. If he lost the right to succession and was still able to fake that grateful appearance, then he was truly too unfathomable. *****. Back at Prince Cheng's estate, Jing Xiao held his wife in his embrace and entered the main residence and ordered, quickly fetch a cold towel. After covering Mu Hanjiang with a quilt, Shi handed Jing Xiao a cold towel to put on his wife's forehead. Jun Qing, how do you feel now? Jing Xiao looked at him in distress. In their previous lifetime, Mu Hanjiang's health continuously worsened more and more. Ultimately, in the last few years he had to take medicine at every meal. In this lifetime, he would certainly be more attentive and keep him strong and healthy to the best of his ability. I am fine, don't you have to go visit the second prince? Don't delay. He persuaded, struggling to sit up. Upon seeing this, Jing Xiao pressed him down. My brother already sent someone to say that he will not blame me. Although he knew that he should go to his brother, etiquette was one thing, but it was more important to not be misunderstood. Jing Xiao felt that Jun Qing's health was very important, but he really should go to his brother's place to explain later. Your Highness, the imperial physician has arrived. Ji Shi notified. While Zhang Taiyi was a physician in the imperial physician courtyard, he was not the head physician. Even if his skills were rather good, he never expected for Prince Cheng to call him over to treat a patient. He had rather mixed feelings about it. This. Zhang Taiyi took Mu Hanzhang's pulse and looked at his complexion. Awkwardly, he turned to face Jing Xiao. Jing Xiao understood and dismissed all servants to retreat. Zhang Taiyi may speak his mind freely. Upon checking the prince consort's pulse, his condition is presumably caused by pent-up negative emotions and thoughts, which then became harmful to the body. Zhang Taiyi glanced at Jing Xiao. This type of fever was not a serious illness, but since Prince Cheng had called him over, there was definitely more to it. He could only go with the flow and continued, "This old official will speak plainly, although the prince consort is a male, concerning the deed between a married couple. Compared to women, it is easier for men to sustain injuries. Your Highness should be more careful." Saying it so bluntly, Mu Hanzhang's entire face turned bright red. Jing Xiao embarrassedly touched the tip of his own nose. "Yes, this prince was hasty and impulsive. May your Highness pardon the offense." Zhang Taiyi was a bit apprehensive since he was unable to guess Prince Cheng's intentions. Haha, this prince is rather appreciative of Zhang Taiyi's straightforwardness. After taking the prescription written by Zhang Taiyi and handing it over to Meng Shi to decoct, Jing Xiao took out a string of coral beads from his sleeve. "Your Highness, I cannot accept it." Zhang Taiyi was immediately frightened, his whole body breaking out in cold sweat. He had always avoided attracting attention to himself, as he did not want to be dragged into the dispute between the imperial heirs. "This is not for you." Jing Xiao saw that he was hesitant and couldn't help but say, "I heard that your son excels in martial arts. This year, he passed the military examinations. It is a congratulatory gift for him." It was said that red coral beads could help people avoid mortal danger. It was indeed a good item for martial artists to have. Furthermore, it was not good for Zhang Taiyi to continuously decline His Highness' goodwill towards his son. Like this, his mind was set at ease. If that is the case, then this old official thanks Prince Cheng for the reward on behalf of my son. Some other day, this official will send him over to express his thanks personally. Zhang Taiyi accepted the red coral beads, then packed up, saluted in farewell and took his leave. Jing Xiao ordered Duo Fu to see the imperial physician out as he sat down at the side of the bed in order to change the wet towel on Mu Hanzhang's forehead. "These things, just make the servants do it. Your Highness should rest," Mu Hanzhang said in a lukewarm manner. Currently his husband was gentle and sweet, perhaps it was because he felt that his prince consort was new and amusing and he was not actually sincere about treating him well. But then, was his husband really sincere or not? In his heart, he made his own conclusions taking into consideration everything that had happened, including the events that happened today in the imperial palace. The heart that had just warmed up, immediately froze into ice. Jun Cheng. Jing Xiao saw his wife, who had just let down his guard this morning, was once again becoming distant with him. As expected, it was the events that happened in the palace that made him sad. He had always been impatient and spoke rashly, however with Jun Qing's temperament, he would definitely suppress everything in his heart. It looks like, in the future, there were still many things for them to talk about. Jing Xiao scratched his head and sighed, "Today in the imperial palace, you were wronged." Mu Hanzhang opened his eyes and looked impassively at him. This person was actually aware of this. It is merely kneeling for a few moments. "I am not a woman. I won't feel aggrieved just because my mother-in-law wanted to display her authority. Your Highness is just being oversensitive." The voice was very gentle and sounded absolutely pleasing to the ears, but for this person to say that they did not have even a little bit of resentment, Jing Xiao thought that his wife was surely angry. "In the capital, the people ridicule me, saying that despite the fact that I've made great achievements, I am unable to inherit the kingdom. Although I am a legitimate heir to the throne, I am no better than an illegitimate prince born to a palace maid. Jing Shao spoke these words in a self-deprecating tone. This had been something he had suppressed in his heart for more than a dozen years. It was only now that he was finally speaking the words from the bottom of his heart. Mu Han Zhang's hand that was concealed under the quilt gradually tightened into a fist, his heart becoming more and more numb. Sure enough, last night, this person had not been drunk at all. Everything, all of it was simply because he wanted to physically torment him, nothing more. This humbler consort is now aware. This consort will not request anything else from your highness but only beg your highness to reward me with divorce documents once you have obtained recognition and success. End chapter. The Wife is First. Volume 1, Planning Ahead. Chapter 5, Fever. Divorce. Jing Shao was stunned. After recovering from the shock he sneered, "You're a man. Divorcing you doesn't really affect your reputation. Nevertheless, as a divorced man, you will not be allowed to take the entrance examination. Even if I let you go, in this lifetime you are destined to miss the imperial examination. Then what do you want?" Mu Hanzhong sat up and looked at him coldly. If this person wanted to keep him here to be tormented, he would definitely not endure this abuse. "I can't inherit the throne and you can't participate in the civil examinations, therefore we are even," Jing Shao said with a slightly self-righteous magnetic voice. "Ah!" Mu Hanzhong was stunned for a long time. In the originally cold face of Jun Qing appeared a crack, some sort of a silly expression with his mouth half open. It felt as if he had been choked and then thrown into the air, only to land on a soft cushion in the end. Jing Shao saw his stupefied expression and thought it was funny. He wanted to try reaching out to poke his face, but a voice from the outside called, "Your Highness, His Highness medicine is ready." Jing Shao frowned and allowed Meng Shi to bring the medicine inside. Mu Hanzhong reined in his expression and lowered his head, not saying a thing. Meng Shi took a quick glimpse of his complexion, then she smiled and walked over to the bedside. "Your Highness, please allow this servant to serve His Highness the medicine." Meng Shi carried the medicine and shyly looked over to the side of the bed where Jing Shao was motionless. Jing Shao took the medicine bowl and moved his hand to signal for Meng Shi to retreat, turning his face towards the door. "Doufu. Here." Doufu smiled and revealed his head through the small space between the doors. "Stand guard outside the door." Jing Shao saw his appearance and thought it was somewhat funny. Doufu was already this age but still behaved like a child. "As His Highness commands." Doufu naturally understood what the prince meant. He dismissed the rest of the servants to go do other work and ordered for guards to stand at each corner of the residence, while he himself, guarded in front of the door, basked in sunlight and smiling. He made sure that no one could lean against the walls and hear what His Highnesses were saying. Cough, cough. "Your Highness." Having a heavy person dropped on top of him out of the blue, Mu Hanzhong couldn't breathe properly for some time. "Haha, you shouldn't sit up, quickly lie down so you can break your fever," Jing Shao said happily, immediately moving to stuff him back into the quilt and wrap the quilts around him before settling at his side, putting Jun Qing into his embrace. Mu Hanzhong was dumbfounded for only a moment, but by the time he managed to react, he was already wrapped like a silkworm cocoon. It was just that there was an extra octopus wrapping him up. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Indeed, this person did have a quick temper. With his face pressed into Jing Shao's chest, Mu Hanzhong could only helplessly adjust his position, putting a little of distance between them. "Jun Qing, in the future if anything happens, I will tell you. If you have any opinions or ideas, you must also tell me. This way we can avoid having any quarrels." Jing Shao lifted his hand and pulled down the guan from his wife who was wrapped in his embrace, stroking the top of his head gently. "HN." Mu Hanzhong responded vaguely with a muffle. His mind relaxed as he somewhat became drowsy. "Jun Qing, during our wedding night, I was really unhappy and drank too much. I thought that since everyone didn't believe in me, then I should just let everyone believe that I am no good. Jing Shao narrowed his eyes. Indeed, this was what he thought when he had woken up. But after pondering it over and knowing what will happen in the future, winning that position was not impossible. But when I woke up and saw you, I changed my mind. Mu Hanzhong did not answer, he only listened attentively. Jing Shao saw that there was no sound from the person in his embrace, and thinking that he was asleep, he gently touched his wife's hair as he continued, I think it is better to just have a good life with you. Whether people believe in me or not, it is not important. In the future, I will protect you and not let you suffer even a little wrong. Towards the person in his embrace, he was still unsure of how he felt. He only knew that this person was the only one who was willing to accompany him through everything, even in death. Being reborn in this lifetime, he harbored suspicions towards everyone at every step, and with every step there was only murderous intentions. Only him, this person was his redemption. He would hold onto him tightly and never let him go. The whisper was spoken very softly, as if Jing Shao was saying it to himself. Unknowingly, he tightened his embrace towards the person in the middle of his chest, and made a soft smile. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When Mu Hanzhang's fever broke, it was already past noon. Jing Shao had sent Dou Fu to personally deliver a message to the second prince's manor, apologizing to his older brother for not being able to visit and asking if he may instead visit later that night. Although the imperial family was large and had many members, their circumstance was special. As a newly married couple, they didn't need to pay courtesy to that many people. At any rate, his personal relationship with his brother had not always been very good, so he might as well just pay a courtesy visit to his older brother's family later. Now it was afternoon and it was inappropriate to go at this time. Instead, he simply changed his clothes and had lunch with his wife to his heart's content. Who would have guessed that just as the food was being taken away, Dou Fu came to announce that the second prince and his consort had come. Jing Shao heard this and right away, put down his teacup and headed out. Your Highness. Mu Hanzhang pulled him back. Change your clothes first and then go out. Oh. Jing Shao slapped his forehead. He forgot that his sister-in-law would also be there. Not being properly attired was lacking in manners, so he changed his clothes hurriedly. After waking up, he didn't think that he would be able to see his brother so soon. He only felt that there are so many words he must tell him and that this time he definitely couldn't be muddle-headed. Your Highness, this one will not go. Mu Hanzhang drew back the hand that was being pulled by Jing Shao. What's wrong? When paying a formal visit, even if it was his elder brother, he still had to make greetings and serve tea. They'd also prepare a greeting gift. Jing Shao stopped his steps and looked at him. Mu Hanzhang pursed his lips. His Highness did not go to the second prince's residence because this one was sick. Although he is your own brother, it is not worthwhile for a small misunderstanding to arise. N. Jing Shao's head was filled with question marks and he stared blankly at his wife for quite a while, only to understand that Jun Qing was afraid that his brother would see that his wife was well and might think that they deliberately did not go over to his second brother's residence, which might hurt the relationship between the two brothers. He couldn't help but smile. He seized Mu Hanzhang's waist and held him, saying as he smiled, in the future if Jun Qing has something to say, then just say them bluntly. My brain does not function very well. Mu Hanzhang looked at him and softly said, this consort will remember. His Highness should hurry and go now. He knows that Jing Shao's feelings for this brother who shared the same birth mother with him is not ordinary. If he said those words straightforwardly, there would be suspicion of him trying to instigate disharmony in their fraternal relationship. Since he was an outsider who have just married into the family, it would be better for him to be careful with what he says. Is Jun Qing remembering to speak bluntly or noting down that my brain doesn't function well? Jing Shao, seeing him answer so fast, could not help but tease him. I will remember them all. Mu Hanzhang's expression was still as indifferent as before. Jing Shao, seeing him with such calm expression, felt that he was indescribably good-looking, so after looking around and seeing that no one was paying attention, he stole a kiss on his cheek and then quickly went out the door. Mu Hanzhang watched Jing Shao's departing figure and slowly rubbed where he had been kissed on the cheek. The corner of his lips could not help but lift upwards. Because the second prince came so suddenly, Jing Shao had no time to go out to welcome them, and Duo Fu directly invited them into the tea room of the Tingfeng Pavilion. The Tingfeng Pavilion was where Jing Shao usually received guests, read books, and amused himself. It was already considered part of his inner courtyard, where he usually only accepted guests whom he was particularly close with. The layout of Prince Cheng's manor was like this: the courtyard in front was considered part of the outer courtyard. Past the flower garden was precisely where the Tingfeng Pavilion was, and then behind the pavilion was the east courtyard and the west courtyard. Jing Shao lived in the east courtyard, and in the west lived the womenfolk. The tea room is quite elegantly furnished. Many of the elaborate tables and chairs were made in the Jiangnan style. On all four sides, apart from the pillars, it was all decoratively carved. During the winter, when they circled around wearing winter clothes, it was quite warm. In the summertime, the four walls could be removed and allow for ventilation on all four sides. On the flower shelf were placed several fresh seasonal flowers, and a few thin vines were also wrapped around the pillars. At this time, buds have already begun to open, bringing forth a light yellow among the tender green, filling the pavilion with vitality. The man sitting in the seat of honor in the tea room was dressed in a dark yellow long garment for princes. His figure was slender and his appearance bright. He was only sitting there, but he exuded a powerful, graceful, and dignified air. Using the five senses, he and Jing Shao were about 70% similar. It was only that Jing Shao was somewhat less austere and a bit more calm. This person was Jing Shao's brother from the same birth mother, Empress Yuan's eldest son, Jing Chen. End chapter. The Wife is First. Volume 1, Planning Ahead. Chapter 6, The Concubines in the Inner Courtyard. Gerger. The closer he got to the tea hall, the more excited he got, and his footsteps couldn't help but speed up. He hadn't even entered the room, but he had already called onto that person. Jing Chen put down the teacup in his hand and wrinkled his brow slightly. Seeing Jing Shao, who was hurriedly walking in, he couldn't help but scold him. "You are already married now, but still so impatient. You shouldn't be like this." Jing Shao repressed his natural disposition and stopped, then shook his head and forced a smile. Ever since he was small, he was used to being reprimanded by his brother. Once he heard him begin his scolding, all he wanted to do was run. But now, as he heard the sentence, "You shouldn't be like this," he couldn't help but felt an incomparable sense of familiarity, and he only hoped that his brother would from now on reprimand him for a long time. He walked in casually, and seeing his brother furrowing his brow as he stared at him, he couldn't help but smile again and go over to pay respects to his elder brother and sister-in-law. Shu Shu, his sister-in-law, consort Xiao, who was sitting next to his brother, rose and returned the greeting. Seeing that Jing Chen was still cold-faced and not speaking, she smiled and said, "Originally, we weren't supposed to come. However, hearing that younger brother-in-law's wife is unwell and not seeing you come to our residence, your brother couldn't settle down, so His Highness brought me here with him." In ordinary people's families, newlywed couple would go over to their parents, brothers, and sister-in-laws to pay respect in the morning, and in the afternoon they would visit their parents-in-law. So, although them coming this time was somewhat unexpected, it was still acceptable. Jing Shao naturally understood the reason behind it. Hearing what his sister-in-law had said, he raised his head and looked at his brother, whose brow was still wrinkled. He suddenly felt warmth in his heart. During his last life, he was really blind to think that whenever his brother was wrinkling his brow at him, he was thinking that Jing Shao was an eyesore, without knowing that his brother was doing so much for him even when he was not asking. Gerger, Jing Shao slowly walked in front of his elder brother and opened his mouth, yet only that one word came out. Jing Shao stared blankly. Astonished, he raised his head to look at him. Since their imperial father had decreed for him to marry the second son of Marquis of Beiwei, he thought that this younger brother whom he had loved and protected ever since he was a child would not call him Gerger again. The thought that he would only address him as second imperial prince made his heart ache. Today, he didn't have any hopes that Jing Shao would come to visit, but he didn't expect that the head steward of the Prince Cheng estate would personally come and apologize, allowing some hope to raise in his heart. After waiting until noon had passed and seeing that he had still not come, he couldn't sit still anymore and went over himself. He didn't expect that there would be such a pleasant surprise. Seeing that the two brothers seemed to have something to talk about, Consort Xiao smiled as she got up and said, "I will go and see Prince Consort Cheng." "Sao Chi? Jun Qing has not gotten up yet. You and Gerger just wait here for a moment and I will go call him to come out." Jing Shao quickly stopped Consort Xiao. "Oh, look at me, I'm all muddle-headed." Consort Xiao blanked for a second, then annoyedly wrung the handkerchief in her hands. She was so embarrassed that her face had turned crimson. Prince Consort Cheng was a man. Although she was his sister-in-law, he is still a man and she couldn't just go visit his bedside, although his elder brother could go into the bedroom to visit his sister-in-law. Jing Chen glanced thoughtfully at his wife, then he got up and said to Jing Shao, "Younger brother's consort is sick, don't inconvenience him. I will go with you to see him." Duo Fu, who was on the side, heard this, and quietly called the little servant girl to run fast and inform the prince consort. When Jing Shao took his brother into the bedroom of the east wing, he saw Mu Hanjiang was wearing an outer garment, leaning on a soft divan in the outer room, covered with a thin blanket. The outer garment was loose and had a soft texture. At first glance, one could tell it was something for wearing at home. Although it was not very formal, the way the clothing was tied was very neat and proper, and seeing that the person in question was sick, it was also not considered lacking in manners. Looking at this situation, Jing Chen nodded to himself and stopped Mu Hanjiang's action of getting up to give salutations. "How come on the second day of being newly married you are already sick?" Jing Chen looked at his younger brother. Today, when he heard that Prince Cheng's wife was ill, his first reaction was to wonder what must have happened when they visited the court in the morning. This, Jing Shao coughed lightly and rubbed his nose. No matter how thick one's skin was, under his brother's gaze he would still blush a little. Mu Hanjiang looked at the embarrassed Jing Shao and slightly curved his mouth as he said, "Elder imperial brother-in-law does not have to worry, I just caught a little cold and had a bit of a fever, drinking some medicine has helped bring it down." Right, the Marquis of Beiwei's family is too stingy. The wedding dress was so thin. Jing Hao busily went along with it. However, trying to cover it up only made it more conspicuous. Mu Hanjiang could not help but roll his eyes. Jing Chen looked at his younger brother and sighed, "Go to the study with me. I have some words to say to you." Jing Shao hung his head dejectedly and was dragged away, but before he was completely out of the door, he turned back and made a pitiful expression toward Mu Hanjiang. Ha ha, Mu Hanjiang was amused by his appearance. He didn't know that such a normally taciturn and grave person would in front of his own brother actually turned into a small child. He couldn't help but laugh out. The nobleman, who was as elegant as Lily Magnolia, suddenly revealed a vibrant smile, creating a bright countenance that could indescribably move someone. Jing Shao, seeing him smile, and smiling so beautifully, contentedly followed his brother into the study room to be admonished. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. This one wishes sister-in-law good health. Consort Xiao looked at Song Lingzin, who had just given her a full salutation, and couldn't help but wrinkle her brow. This person was Jing Shao's secondary consort. She had already crossed the threshold 2 years ago. By rights she was allowed to call her Sao Chi, but now a primary prince consort has already married into the family, and yet this lady Song still appeared in the tea room like she was the mistress of the estate, dressed in a water-pink embroidered gauze dress, wearing a beaded golden phoenix hairpin so ostentatiously. "Why have you come?" Consort Xiao was still nervous about that glare that the second prince had given her. Now, seeing this kind of Song Lingzin made her feel even more agitated, and without much politeness she just directly asked that. His Highness Prince Cheng and His Highness the second prince have something to talk about, and this servant thought that Cao Qi drinking tea all alone must be boring, so I prepared some tea and refreshments in the small reception pavilion, especially to invite Cao Qi to go and have some. Song Lingzin said this cleverly, deliberately using ambiguous words to imply that Jing Shao had instructed her to do this. Consort Xiao thought about it. Prince Consort Cheng was a man and couldn't entertain her. Having the secondary wife to accompany her to drink tea was also not inappropriate. Moreover, those two brothers had been gone for this long and were still not back. They definitely had some big political event to discuss, so she rose and followed concubine Song to the west courtyard. Young master, this slave heard that the second prince's consort went with the secondary wife to the small reception pavilion to drink tea. Lan Ting replenished Mu Hanzhang's tea and whispered to him. "Oh." Mu Hanzhang, who was reclining on the divan, looked up from his book and with some mirth, glanced at the nervous young maid. "Where did you hear this from?" Lan Ting's character was quite quick-witted. It's just that she was still so young and haven't been serving him for long, and so she couldn't help but be a little bit timid. Today, she actually took the initiative to try to find out some news. Naturally he had to encourage her a little. "When I went to the tea room to replenish the water, I heard Sister Meng Shi say it." Lan Ting bit her lip and her face had an angry expression. The tone of Meng Shi was clearly praising the secondary wife, yet towards her young master, she gave a cold shoulder as if reveling in schadenfreude. Mu Hanzhang nodded, "You did well." Then he immediately moved his eyes back to the book. "Young master," Lan Ting was very dissatisfied with her young master's uncaring attitude. "You don't even know what Meng Shi said." Mu Hanzhang looked up grudgingly, his tone serene. "She must have said that the prince consort has just gotten married, and on the second day he was already suppressed by the secondary wife. In the future she doesn't know whom she should listen to, right?" Lan Ting was surprised and her eyes opened widely. "Young master, how did you know?" Mu Hanzhang shook his head and smiled. This foolish girl, everything was written on her face. Even if he didn't want to know, it would be hard not to tell. "Reporting to Prince Consort, His Highness wants me to report that he will be having dinner with His Highness the second prince, so you don't have to wait for him." Ji Shi came in and delivered the message, and let the person carrying a food box put it down. "All right." Mu Hanzhang put down the book in his hand and sat down at the dinner table. At noon, when he was having a fever, he had no appetite. Now, he really was hungry. Ji Shi personally stood at the table and served the dishes. Mu Hanzhang picked up the rice bowl and looked at the table full of exquisite dishes. It was much more luxurious than at the Marquis of Beiwei's residence, and when marrying into an imperial prince's family, it was not necessary to pay respects to his mother-in-law every day. If someone married into the Prince Chang's household, why wouldn't she be very happy? Thinking of Jing Shao's tender smile, Mu Hanzhang couldn't help but sighed. If he was not a concubine's son from the Marquis of Beiwei's family and was definitely not qualified to marry Prince Chang, he wondered whether his situation could still be considered fortunate or not. "Ji Shi, is there a map of this place?" After dinner, Mu Hanzhang held a cup of tea and asked on a whim. Responding to the prince consort, "There is a map in the small study room." "This slave will go look for it," Ji Shi respectfully answered. The small study room was in the east wing, not far from the bedroom, and she soon returned with the map. Mu Hanzhang was inevitably surprised that Ji Shi was actually allowed to go to the study to get something for him. Jing Shao would actually let him look at the things in the study as he pleased. He didn't believe that without Jing Shao's permission that the servant girl would be able to get whatever for him. But then he thought that perhaps he was thinking too much. The small study could really just not have any important secrets in it. He slowly opened the scroll in his hand. The precise style of painting was obviously one of a thoroughly planned out design. The outline of the prince's estate was clear within a glance. The residence is divided into the front and rear courtyards, which are separated by the flower gardens and the Tingfeng Pavilion. The Tingfeng Pavilion included a tea hall, study room, a warming room, water room, and other such places. The rear courtyard was divided into the east and west courtyards, with the east wing being Jing Shao's residence and the west wing for the womenfolk. Because Mu Hanjiang was not considered part of the womenfolk, he couldn't live in the west wing, and so he just lived in the east wing together with Jing Shao. His gaze swept through the whole painting and finally settled on the bamboo pavilion. This should be what they called the small reception pavilion, which was located in the center of the west courtyard. Mu Hanjiang closed the scroll. He is a man, having the secondary wife receive his elder brother and sister-in-law was what ought to be, but whether this was something that Jing Shao instructed Lady Song to do or whether she did this of her own accord signified very different implications. Reporting to the prince consort, the two concubines of the west courtyard have come to greet the prince consort and have tea. Meng Shi announced as came in from outside the door. She smiled gleefully and secretly observed the reaction of Mu Hanjiang. Mu Hanjiang, hearing what was said, couldn't help but slightly frown. Prince Cheng had a secondary wife and two concubines. He was aware of this even before their marriage. Today, both of them had come to greet him, yet how come the good at understanding others, and knowing when to advance and retreat secondary wife not come? Was she trying to demonstrate something to him, or was she trying to feel out the prince's attitude towards him? The corner of his lips turned up in a smile. Women's little tricks were truly so boring. He got up and changed his clothes, letting the two concubines wait in the reception room, not hurrying and not being too slow. He switched into a long sapphire blue garment and didn't even wear a crown on his head. He let Lan Ting use a hair ribbon of the same color and tie his hair as she wished. Finally, he called for the two concubines to enter the room. Upon seeing the situation at hand, Shi also couldn't help but frown. In her heart she thought, could it be that the secondary wife had gone with the prince to send off the guests? However, she had a smile on her face as she introduced Mu Hanjiang to them. Dressed in a phoenix yellow dress, with a gentle and lovely countenance, was third-rank concubine Lu, and in the jade-colored dress, looking delicate and spirited, was fifth-rank concubine Li. End chapter.